These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal, Television for Agricultural Business Decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine, and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Welcome to this week's edition of Market Journal. I'm Bryce Duskett. Thanks for being with us today. Coming up on the show, we'll explore an exciting Nebraska-born product that might just change the way that we look at liquid fertilizers. As we approach the end of 2023, we'll get some market insights with Kyle Bumsted as he breaks down the latest trends and factors that are shaping the trade. Plus, what should young or newer ag producers be focused on in 2024? We're going to answer that question coming up here in a few moments. But first, let's kick it off with this story. When you hear the term NASA, places like Houston, Texas, or the Kennedy Space Center in Florida might come to your mind. Yet destinations like Nebraska hold their own charm. Market Journal's Mike Straub had this fascinating sit-down conversation with a NASA scientist to explore how NASA aims to tap into the potential of the Heartland.
NASA is well known for the strides they've made in space exploration. However, some of their best work has been more of a terrestrial focus, specifically their Earth Science Division located at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Last month, Division Director for Mission Planning, Dr. Robert Swap, was given a presentation on the South African Regional Science Initiative, better known as Safari 2000. This was a great segue into how NASA hopes to harness the Heartland.
One of the things that myself and a number of other colleagues have been working on is how can we work to engage with the expertise in the Heartland, realizing we don't know and that people in the Heartland do know, and how can we work together to bring together the best pieces of what we both have to offer. So in NASA Earth Sciences, we are really strong at innovation, exploration, cutting edge stuff. However, people who live and work here are experts regarding the way that they work the land, they understand the land, they manage the land, and I believe that in many ways we complement each other well.
From groundbreaking research to a thriving extension system, when you're talking about available data and a good working relationship with agricultural producers around the state, Dr. Swap told us working in conjunction with the University of Nebraska system would be instrumental in working toward the goals of harnessing the Heartland.
Nebraska is extremely strong in their extension activities. They're working with those who work the land. Their understanding of the landscapes, the land-atmosphere interactions. 130 years of soil moisture data, groundwater data, multiple different types of ecosystems that they've mastered and have a unique understanding of. And in many ways, working with them where they have that ground truth from the ground to nose height, and we can work with them to go from nose height to satellite. And we see them as key partners, whether it be on the science side, the ag side, the natural resource side, or on the medical services side as well. So we're really excited. In many ways, Nebraska and the University of Nebraska system represents almost like one-stop shopping, if you will, kind of like the large intellectual Costco, in the sense that we can come in here and you have expertise of all these different flavors, and more importantly, you work together and you have a can-do spirit and get stuff done. And I think that's essential for the success of this concept of harnessing the Heartland.
Drought has played a huge part in cropping systems across Nebraska and much of the western United States. Over the last couple years, when it comes to these kinds of studies, Dr. Swap knows that input from everyone will play an important role in the success of any given mission. In a sense, this is a perfect opportunity to think globally by acting locally.
And the notion is that we're in the middle of a scoping study, and we're looking to engage with stakeholders, and those stakeholders are everybody from, scientists and people who design satellites, all the way down to the folks who actually have to live with that information, the farmers, the rangelands, tribal communities, folks that are living off the land. And we're pulling together and working through stakeholder engagement right now to listen to the expressed needs. What are people most concerned about? And I think it's important to stress that the time is now. If people have thoughts, comments, or would like to learn more, we are hoping that folks would reach out sooner and share their thoughts, ask their questions. If they're willing to, now's the time. It's an open invitation for people to get involved. I mention that because, if you're not at the table when these things are decided, you often end up on the menu. So what I'd really like to do is those folks that have some ideas and interests, please feel free to reach out to ourselves or to our colleagues at the University of Nebraska. Eric Hunt is a good point of contact, and we'll be sure to get that information to you, and we look forward to any dialogues that might arise.
Right. Yeah.
As data is collected and analyzed over the next several years, NASA and the University of Nebraska-Lincoln will continue to work towards harnessing the Heartland, making life here on Earth a bit better every day. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Mike Straub.
Thanks for that story, Mike. We do appreciate it. For those eager to delve a bit deeper into the research, you can explore a recent seminar that he conducted at UNL's East Campus last month. We made it convenient for you to find that link. We've posted it over on the Market Journal website right alongside this story. Well, 2023 was quite the roller coaster ride here in the agriculture industry, and there's no doubt that 2024 will have its own set of surprises for us. At this year's National Association of Farm Broadcasting Convention, we caught up with a grain analyst who shared some insights for new and young ag producers as we gear up for the upcoming new year. Joining us now at the NAFB convention is Cody Barilla. He is with Terrain. He's one of the grain analysts as part of that team. Cody, we appreciate the time. As we look broadly at the U.S. economy and all the things happening, there's a lot of changing dynamics, especially as we look toward 2024. What are some of the things you're keeping an eye on that we should be sharing with our producers today?
Yeah, especially when you think about the young and beginning producers out there. We're moving from a period of relatively great margins, high prices, into one where some of these costs and expenses stayed fairly sticky. You look at machinery expense, seed expense continues to go up, labor expense, very expensive, and then you tack on interest rate now. So we have this margin compressed environment as commodity prices continue to slide. And when I think about giving advice and talking to our farm credit customers, especially our young and beginning farm credit customers, I like to boil it into 3 topics. And the first one is look at these purchase decisions and these large decisions you're making through the 2019 version of yourself. The second one is we're managing margins, not prices. And the third one is what is your comparative advantage? So going back to that first topic, looking at these decisions through the 2019 version of yourself. So all farmers remember $4 corn, very difficult times. And when we get to the end of the year and we're making all of these term payments, would that version of you want to take on this additional expense right now? Or would you want to add these marginal acres? So we as farmers have a habit of liking to hit the highs of the markets. We want to get as much out of that corn as we possibly can. And from a young and beginning farmer perspective, without the liquidity and balance sheet strength, it's important to focus on margins, not prices. So starting with that cost of production number, having a really good feel for where you're at there, and then let's set some goals for what type of returns do we want on a per acre basis or a return on investment level. And from there we can take very robotic, precise timing on our pricing of those grains. I think that's going to set producers up for success. And you look at 2023 as an example, the producers that did that are very happy they did at this point in the year. But it's one of those objectives that works year in, year out. And then the third thing, look at your comparative advantage. So when you think of your own farming operation, where do you excel compared to your peers? Are you a low-cost producer because you can work on your own equipment? Are you an expert at bookkeeping and financial acumen? Are you able to keep records of the low carbon intensity grain that you produce and can market that at a higher level? So adding additional revenue to the operation, and one way we've looked at that is through a topic of monetizing conservation.
So we do look forward to 2024. What's one thing on the horizon you think producers might not be looking at right now, but they should be focusing on? 45Z
tax credits. That is a tax credit to ethanol plants and biofuel plants on low carbon intensity corn. The rules are still being developed, but that will be in place in 2025, so January 1st of 2025. So the grain we raise here in 2024 is eligible for that tax credit. And the rules are still being developed, so it's difficult to say, but I think there can be substantial revenue opportunities if one were to have the traceability and could verify that that is low carbon intensity grain. And that actually pairs really well into the conservation programs we talked about. So those farmers that are growing cover crops, they reduce the carbon intensity of that score. Same with no-till and some of those other things.
Thanks again to Cody for taking the time to sit down with us down there in Kansas City as part of the National Association of Farm Broadcasting Convention. Good to visit with him. Up next, let's talk grain and livestock markets. Joining in the broadcast is Kyle Bumsted. Kyle, happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you too, Bryce.
Let's talk about the grain markets to start with. Corn and soybeans. How do you see those markets?
That's a good question here. Middle of the week, we took out major support here on the corn market here. We dropped below that 470.5 area on the March contract. That was that low that we needed to hold. We closed that day at 469 3/4. Now, next area on the chart, we dropped underneath round number 470. It's obviously going to be 460. 455 is a number that I have, and long term, the way it's acting, could be down in the 430s. So not to sound real bearish, but the market's not giving you much bullish news right now. I know there's a lot of talk of farmers not selling, but there's still plenty of grain moving. It's dry, the winter's good, and people are going to need some money after the first of the year here. So I think those bin doors are going to get cracked open, and the commercials know it. Now, soybeans, same kind of situation here, middle of the week. There's a little bit more friendliness out there long term in the soybeans, judging by that May-July bean spread. But up front here, we did take out some technical support here on that 200-day moving average and closed below it here middle of the week. So, the case of the bullishness in corn, we saw a previous week here that the non-commercial funds had covered some shorts here, and it looks like they're adding back to those shorts here as we move through the middle of this week here before Christmas. Soybeans here, they still had a little bit of length there, and it looks like middle of the week they were paring back some of that length.
Okay, on the soybean front, of course, a lot of eyes on South America this time of year. Also on the flash sales, see what's happening when it comes to demand, in particular, leaving the country. What are you seeing on those two fronts, Kyle?
Well, I know there's been a lot of talk already with Mexico and them shutting the railroad corridors down there, but anybody who's ever dealt with the railroad knows that the railroad's not going to let that happen very long. The railroad's going to win. So I don't look for these corridors to be shut down very long as far as the rail for the corn situation. But the bean situation here, we've seen flash sales here. We didn't see any here middle of the week like a lot of people were anticipating here Wednesday morning based off what we had seen the previous sessions here. And what it looked like, there was some bull spreading going on. Looks like there was some of the front month was gaining on the deferred contracts. I mean, even though we were down, Jan beans, of course, they're going in delivery here at the end of the month, but March beans were down 6 3/4 cents, and the deferred contracts were down a little bit more than that. So looking out long term here, there's still an issue here in South America with the weather. Based off that May-July soybean spread at a 5.5 cent carry, that tells me that the commercials are trying to get some coverage out there in that July contract or the May contract versus the July contract, because that's kind of when they're going to be harvesting in South America, and there's still a bit of concern down there with the dryness that they're having. And you can also see that with some of the basis push you've seen here with soybeans here locally. We've seen the basis improve nationally here against that March contract, which that's going to be our lead contract, our cash contract here soon. So we've been watching that March contract for the basis. The basis has been improving. So it tells me that they're trying to go to the cash market and source to get soybeans for that export market.
All right, I appreciate the overview on that, Kyle. Let's talk livestock, shall we? You told me when it comes to cattle market, it's anybody's guess. Let's get your thoughts on that.
It's a very good question. We've been beat up really hard in this cattle complex since the last time we talked. Since the middle of September, we were down almost $56 in feeders from the highs to the low there. Middle of the week here, we got back up here to the mid 225s, 224, 225. Now, feeder cattle sales this time of year, a lot of sale barns are done with feeder sales. There's going to be a few here and there, but the majority of your feeder cattle sales are done for the year until we get back from New Year's holiday. There's going to be some special sales, and the feeder's really going to start coming to town after that for folks that have had to hold for tax reasons and cash flow purposes. But looking here at the live cattle situation here. These funds, these non-commercials, they pared down their length here. I think last Friday when the report came out, they were long like 20 some odd thousand contracts. And it looked like to me there was just basically a little bit of today midweek, there was a little bit of adding back a few longs, not a lot of commercial interest here. But speaking of commercial interest here, we did see middle of the week here, we started with some cash trade, 170 here in central Nebraska. That's going to majors, and those are shipping Christmas Day. That night they're going to be shipping those cattle out. There's been a lot of folks holding out for 171. I think that's potential they could get that here. We haven't seen any cash trade in the south here, but I'm looking for most of the cash trade this week to be steady at worst, maybe a little bit better. And looking at some of the historicals, I look for cash to be better next week, the week after Christmas. The week between Christmas and New Year's, historically, cash is better that week than the week leading up to Christmas. So also interesting to note, too, that the first quarter of the following year, cash has always been better or had a higher average than the fourth quarter of the previous year. So I'm looking for the cash market to slowly grind higher as we work into 2024. Now, based off those spreads that I talk about, we've got February $3.50 under April, and we've got December under February right now. But what it tells me is right now we've got a weight issue out there, and we've got plenty of cattle here short term, as based off some of these fictitious government cattle on feed reports that we've seen here the last few months, where they said, hey, there's less cattle, but obviously the market's saying there's plenty of cattle right now up front short term here, and it looks like that based off the market as far as the cash market and the spreads. We've got some inventory here to work through, and I know last week there were some cattle bought with time on them. Some of those cattle don't ship until the middle of January that were bought last week. So we do have some cattle. The Packers got a little bit of inventory around them, but I do think that once we turn after the first of the year, things could start to work back in the cattle feeders' favor here. And we still haven't seen any of those great big snowstorms that have moved through here as far as Kansas, Texas, and even here in central Nebraska that could take pounds off. So, it's been a good winter for feeding cattle. You just go look at them and they're gaining 3.5 to 4 pounds, it seems.
Good stuff as always with Kyle. We appreciate him joining us here on the broadcast this week. Earlier in the program, we talked a bit about some of the challenges for new or beginning farmers and ranchers. Working to build an operation of your own or even work into an existing one can certainly bring on some frustrating times, but there are some tools out there to make it a bit easier for this group of producers. In the latest issue of the Nebraska Farmer, you can read about some of the opportunities awaiting beginning farmers and ranchers. Up next, we check in on weather with Nebraska Extension Ag Climatologist and Market Journal Chief Meteorologist Eric Hunt. Eric, a lot of folks going to be hitting the road this weekend for some holiday travel. Are you seeing anything out there that might get in their way?
Well, thanks, Bryce. Yes, there is a system that we are paying attention to, and hopefully you guys are too. So what I am confident right now is the storm system will be moving from California into the central U.S. On Christmas Eve. And I'm quite confident of moisture across the eastern portion of Nebraska in the form of rain and some snow in western Nebraska on Christmas Eve into Christmas Day. We are looking potentially at least a half inch and maybe upwards of 2 inches of rain across portions of eastern Nebraska. There's still a lot of uncertainty with the storm system, though, in terms of strength, in terms of kind of overall placement. So the European model is stronger and slower with the storm system. The GFS is quite a bit quicker with it and a little bit weaker. So if the European model solution verifies, there will be quite a bit of snow into central Nebraska, with also potential for some icing on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning from Valentine down toward Kearney. Again, that's not a guarantee, but I think that's something to watch out for And again, if this does verify, we will probably be picking up at least 1.5 inches of rain across most of eastern Nebraska and potential for 6 to 10 inches of snow across portions of west central and central Nebraska. Panhandle looks more like probably a safe 1 to 3, maybe 4 inches for you. Again, I just keep a close eye on this. This could have a major impact on travel as we head into Christmas Day and the day after Christmas. As we head to later portion next week, we're looking at a strengthening of the Pacific jet heading into California. So that will be producing quite a bit of precipitation. So if you're heading out to California later next week, they're probably going to get hammered with rain. And it'll be interesting to see if this actually starts moving into the central U.S. as we head into the first part of January. Later next week, though, our area looks like we should be relatively dry, although I imagine it's probably going to be relatively cloudy, especially in the eastern half of the state for most of next week. Still above average temperatures for this time of year. I don't think we're going to be as mild as we have been this previous week. And again, there's a chance, particularly if we do get a good bit of snowfall across portions of western and central Nebraska, that we will see some pretty cold overnight temperatures, maybe some sub-zero temperatures if we do have a good bit of snow cover, some clear skies. And I think our high temperatures are probably going to be probably at least 10 degrees cooler for most of next week than they've been this week, which still would put us a little bit above average for this time of year. In terms of drought monitor, we did see a little bit of improvement on the drought monitor across portions of York and Hamilton County. Again, so it's still very bad. That's still extreme drought, but at least it's not exceptional drought. And for Hamilton and York County, it's the first time that you've been out of exceptional drought for quite a while. We got this because we did get some decent precipitation across this portion of the state last week, broad 1 to 1.25 inches, maybe some 1.5 inch totals kind of down near Superior. Eastern Nebraska generally picked up 1/4 to 1/2 inch of moisture, light amounts in western Nebraska or almost nothing. But again, a lot of that went in because soil temperatures are still relatively warm for this time of year, generally in the mid-30s. So again, this rain that is coming in this week will be generally going in the ground. So if we do get 2 inches of rain, the ground will hold it, which is great news. Usually this time of year, for a 2-inch rain, would certainly not all go in the ground. Soil moisture, again, as it's been for most of fall, lowest percentiles in the southeast and kind of also in the southwestern portion of the state, generally fairly good across north central Nebraska. But again, I think we could make some significant improvements with this map as we head into next week. It has been a relatively warm month, not quite necessarily record warm for most places, but generally above average. This is relatively typical of an El Nino winter, certainly an El Nino December. And again, this has just been very warm. We have a lack of snow cover, so the Grinch has been pretty happy with this. There's almost no snow anywhere in the U.S. other than some mountainous regions. And by the way, we are a little bit below average on snowfall, snowpack of the northern Rockies. Thanks, and back to you, Bryce. Hope everybody has a happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
Okay, thank you for that update, Eric. We will certainly pay attention as that system makes its way through the area. Finally today, we've seen a number of great American companies get their start in garages, and here might be another potential one to add to that list. During this year's Husker Harvest Days, we encountered a local agronomist who might have uncovered what some of the industry consider the future of liquid fertilizers. Enter NitroMag, a new product currently undergoing some trials on farms across Nebraska. We had the chance to sit down with NitroMag's creator at his home in York, where he revealed the fascinating journey of how this idea took shape.
A lot of the research that he came across said that the urea-amine-based form of nitrogen would be more beneficial to the plant.
Recently, GMCO Growth Technologies introduced a Nebraska-born product called NitroMag to the agricultural world. The potential benefits of this product are very exciting for creator Mark Dennis, and is currently being tested by some of the top farmers across Nebraska. And it all started with a man, his garage, and his wife Splinter.
Years and years ago, I came across a product that was used in the industry, not ag industry. It was used in commercial industries as far as de-icers and dust control. Did that job very well. But I started to cross it over in using it because it was relatively inexpensive and it had a good level of several other nutrients in it, but mainly I was after the mag. So earlier in my career, I had worked with liquid ureas and things and how to convert those. And I thought, well, if I take this and mix them together, I wonder if that would hold up. Well, that was the aha moment. So I scurried around and got the raw ingredients and As the story goes, I went in and grabbed my wife's blender off the shelf, off the counter, came out and mixed it up, and then I just waited because I knew it wasn't gonna explode, but it was gonna make a mess if it didn't work. Well, it did work. It stayed in solution beautifully. And then I put it in the beer fridge, and I had it. Then I put it in the freezer overnight, and I kept watching it, and it never separated. It never fell out. It never crystallized. It was a great product.
During his experimentation, Mark reached out to GMCO Growth Technologies to purchase large quantities of magnesium chloride. Naturally, after several shipments were delivered, the folks over at GMCO got very curious as to how he was utilizing this product. And a new partnership was born.
I had been buying this mag chloride from this GMCO for quite a few years, and they'd sell it to me by the semi-load. Finally, one day, they called me and said, "What are you doing with that?" And I said, "Well, I'm actually using it in agriculture." Well, then they sent a guy out, and he interviewed me, and as he said, "Yeah, that's the future." And at that point, then this thing took off. So we set up a temporary facility in Hastings, and it made a perfect batch right off the bat. So that's where it took off. And right now we're putting in a big plant over west of Grand Island. They're putting in the tanks right now and building the production facility. It's quite a deal. These guys have been wonderful to work with.
While Nitromag isn't yet commercially available, the end goal for Mark and GMCO is to produce a product that contains essential nutrients that plants need at an affordable price in order to achieve higher yields for producers come harvest time. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Bill Dodd.
Now, if you're interested in learning more about Nitromag or MGCO Growth Technologies, we've added a link to their website along with this story. You can find that over on the Market Journal homepage. Well, that about wraps up this week's program. If you did miss any stories, catch up with Market Journal by following along on our YouTube channel as well as our social media pages. Coming up next week, we'll be looking back and featuring some of our top stories from 2023 as we prepare to welcome in the new year. Thanks as always for tuning in. Hope to have you right back here with us next time. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a very Merry Christmas.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.